Hello. Today General Hospital will reveal as the recent episodes of General Hospital closed with the haunting image of Natalia sitting silently by the car window, her eyes clouded with uncertainty and her heart heavy with unspoken words, an unmistakable shift began to settle in the minds of longtime viewers. Natalia, once introduced as a peripheral character orbiting the more prominent storylines of Port Charles, had steadily evolved into a complex and layered figure. One who embodied quiet regret, persistent guilt, and the difficult pursuit of redemption. Her arc had been filled with missteps and moments of vulnerability, yet it was precisely this imperfection that drew fans to her. And now, in a moment thick with tension and stillness, her path appeared to be veering in a direction few could have anticipated. The offer she received from Sonny, a mysterious promise of a new identity and a clean slate far away from the spiraling legal trouble she faced, seemed, at first glance, like a lifeline. But as Natalia hesitated, as her silence grew heavier than words, that very silence began to sound like a farewell disguised as reprieve. Behind the scenes, the reality was even more devastating. The news broke that Eva LaRue, the actress behind the emotionally resonant portrayal of Natalia, would be departing General Hospital. And unlike many actor exits that result from contract disputes, creative differences, or narrative redirection, LaRue's decision was rooted in something painfully real, something no parent should ever have to endure. Her daughter, Kaya Callahan, had once again become the target of a stranger's stalking and threats, resurrecting a nightmare that both mother and daughter had tried for over a decade to leave behind. For 12 agonizing years, their lives had been infiltrated by fear. Unsolicited letters from a man who signed himself, Freddy Krueger, a name plucked from the depths of horror fiction but used here as a chilling signature in very real threats. It escalated when the stalker began contacting Kaya's school, falsely identifying himself as her father and attempting to gain access to her. The facade of safety crumbled. What viewers of General Hospital saw as gripping television. The simmering tension between Natalia and Sonny, the morally gray decisions she faced, the legal quicksand swallowing her piece by piece, paled in comparison to the dread LaRue faced in real life. The fictional turmoil of Port Charles, no matter how chaotic, was a controlled storm. But the ordeal LaRue and Kaya endured was raw, unfiltered, and terrifying. It was not crafted by writers or resolved in the span of a sweeps week. It was a lived trauma, one that forced LaRue to step away not just from a role she had infused with remarkable authenticity, but from an entire chapter of her professional life. Her exit from the show is not just a narrative development, it is a maternal act of protection. By removing herself from the public eye and the demanding schedule of daytime television, LaRue is choosing to stand vigil beside her daughter, to prioritize Kaya's safety and emotional well-being above all else. It is a testament to her strength, and a heartbreaking reflection of the real dangers that linger far beyond the sound stages and studio lights. The upcoming Paramount Plus documentary My Nightmare Stalker, the Eva LaRue story will give voice to the silent horror they faced for over a decade. It will pull back the curtain on the fragile illusion of safety that was shattered repeatedly, beginning in 2007 when the first threats arrived, and intensifying in 2015 when Kaya, still a child, became the direct target. The man responsible for their torment, eventually identified through forensic DNA evidence as James David Rogers, was finally apprehended in 2019. He now serves time in federal prison for his crimes, but the damage he inflicted cannot be fully undone. The scars, emotional, psychological, and spiritual, remain. And for LaRue, walking away from General Hospital is not about giving up a job, it's about reclaiming the right to protect what matters most. Her decision to step away coincides with a turning point in Natalia's story, allowing the writers to gracefully usher the character out without disrupting the emotional truth fans have come to expect. It's a rare moment where fiction bends to accommodate reality, where art bows to the urgency of life. Natalia's departure will leave a palpable void in Port Charles. Her dynamic with Sonny had only just begun to reveal its potential, an alliance steeped in distrust, secrets, and the shared burden of survival. Her complicated history, her struggle with alcohol, her turbulent relationship with her children, all of it felt achingly real. And now, as she exits the canvas, she takes with her the promise of what could have been. But for LaRue, the promise is different. It is not about screen time or story arcs. It is about safety. About being present for the daughter who once watched her mother endure public success while privately navigating the constant threat of a predator in the shadows. It is also a call to awareness. Through her documentary, LaRue hopes to shine a spotlight on the insidious epidemic of stalking, a crime often minimized, dismissed, or misunderstood. She speaks not just for herself and Kaya, but for the estimated 13.5 million individuals who are stalked each year, many of whom suffer in silence, unprotected and unheard. Her story, tragic and brave, is a rallying cry for reform, for empathy, for change. So when fans of General Hospital tune in and realize Natalia is gone, her presence replaced by unanswered questions and a lingering sense of loss, they are not just witnessing the end of a character. They are bearing witness to a mother's fight to reclaim peace, a woman's choice to say no more. And perhaps, in that choice, there lies a greater heroism than any daytime drama could ever hope to capture. Because this time, Eva LaRue isn't playing a part. She is living her truth, and fighting for her daughter with the same fierce love that made Natalia unforgettable. The upcoming documentary My Nightmare Stalker. The Eva LaRue story stands not only as a harrowing recount of one woman's relentless battle against a faceless predator but also as a searing indictment of how society continues to underestimate the long-term psychological devastation inflicted by stalking. It is not merely a cautionary tale, it is a testimony, a cry for justice, and a vivid chronicle of survival in a world that too often treats stalking as a minor inconvenience rather than the prolonged trauma it truly is. For Eva LaRue, the journey captured in the documentary is one that spans over 12 excruciating years, years defined by fear, paranoia, and the painful erosion of everyday peace. It is a scar that never fully fades, a wound that required LaRue and her daughter Kaya Callahan to restructure every aspect of their lives to simply feel safe. Letters signed by Freddy Krueger, an eerie and sadistic nod to horror cinema, became constant reminders that their lives were under siege. And when the threats extended to Kaya's school, with the stalker impersonating her father in an attempt to abduct her, the reality of danger became indisputable. In this context, LaRue's presence on General Hospital had become more than a career opportunity, it was a sanctuary of creative fulfillment and emotional expression. Playing the role of Natalia, a woman torn between her mistakes and the desire for redemption, LaRue brought a raw authenticity to daytime television, the kind that only someone acquainted with real-world trauma could convey. Port Charles became, for a time, a place where she could channel pain into purpose, where she could transform her lived fear into nuanced performances that resonated with viewers on a deep, often unspoken level. Natalia's strength, her vulnerability, her desperate need to hold on to something good while navigating a world full of shadows, it all mirrored LaRue's own private war. Yet when the darkness crept back into her personal life, when Kaya once again became the focus of a renewed threat, LaRue knew the performance had to end. No storyline, no ratings spike, no Emmy-caliber arc could justify staying away from the one role that now demanded her full attention, mother. Her departure from General Hospital is not a professional retreat, it is a personal revolution. It is a mother standing between her child and the darkness, choosing protection over applause, safety over stardom. And it is a choice no actor should have to make, yet one she made with unwavering clarity. The release of My Nightmare Stalker is more than a platform to tell her story. It is a mission to awaken the public and challenge institutions to rethink how they respond to stalking and how they protect those who are hunted not for what they've done, but simply for who they are. In telling her truth, LaRue joins the ranks of countless other victims who have been forced into silence for too long. Her voice, resolute and brave, becomes a lighthouse for others navigating similarly stormy waters. Meanwhile, the General Hospital writing team has handled Natalia's exit with subtle grace and layered storytelling. Rather than abruptly erasing the character or crafting a dramatic, out-of-sync departure, they've allowed Natalia's unraveling to take shape gradually, through a DUI arrest that signaled a life in quiet collapse, through a growing estrangement from her children that highlighted deep, unresolved pain, and through a stagnant relationship with Marco that offered no emotional refuge. Then came Sunny's offer, a new identity, a new beginning, and the opportunity to disappear. It was not presented as an escape without consequences, but as a necessary evolution for someone who had come to realize that her past mistakes could no longer be undone in Port Charles. The narrative whispered what LaRue could not yet say aloud: Natalia's time was ending, not with a bang, but with a gentle, albeit heavy-hearted, letting go. For fans, the loss is deeply felt. Natalia's storyline was far from exhausted. Her interactions with Sunny had just begun to blossom with unpredictability and emotional weight. There were so many doors left unopened: confrontations with Ada Turner, the possibility of redemption with her children, even a shot at reclaiming her own agency outside of the mob's orbit. But what makes her exit so poignant is precisely that it reflects real life's capacity to interrupt even the most promising of arcs. It reminds viewers that some battles are too urgent, too personal, to be paused for fiction. Natalia's quiet ride out of Port Charles becomes a symbolic parallel to LaRue's own exit from Hollywood's glare. And just as Natalia may one day return, wiser, stronger, healed, so too might LaRue, if and when life allows her that space again. Until then, her absence is a powerful statement. It is a woman stepping away not in defeat, but in defiance of fear. It is a message to stalkers that their attempts to isolate and silence will not succeed, not when victims choose to speak, to protect, and to live on their own terms. My Nightmare Stalker will undoubtedly stir conversations, inspire reform, and offer solace to those who have suffered in the same quiet terror. But more than that, it will cement Eva LaRue's place not just as an actress or public figure, but as a survivor and a fighter whose greatest role is played far from the cameras, in the quiet, vigilant strength of motherhood. In choosing her daughter, she has reminded the world that some departures are not endings, they are beginnings born out of courage, carved from pain, and destined to echo louder than any script ever could. The departure of Natalia from General Hospital leaves behind a void that is felt far beyond the pages of the script. While her presence was most notably entwined with the tumultuous narrative orbiting Sunny, an underworld built on loyalty, betrayal, and survival, her absence resonates more profoundly on an emotional level, reverberating through the hearts of devoted viewers who saw in her a quiet but persistent spark of humanity. Natalia may never have been the center of every storyline in Port Charles, but she represented something irreplaceable, the embodiment of a woman trying to survive with her dignity intact in a world built to erode it. She was flawed, deeply so, a mother who had stumbled, a woman haunted by her past, a character who constantly battled the echo of her own regrets, but in those imperfections lay her power. She reminded audiences that not every hero strides in with purpose and perfection. Sometimes, they crawl forward through pain, grasping at redemption with shaking hands and guarded hope. In Natalia, viewers found a mirror to countless untold stories, of mothers who had lost their way but never gave up, of women who had been pulled into the shadows of corrupt systems but still carried within them the flicker of light. Her evolution was not meteoric or dramatic, it was real, grounded, and painfully slow, like so many real-life journeys of healing. She showed that being a catalyst for emotion did not require explosive monologues or center-stage attention. Sometimes, it was in the tremble of her voice, the weariness in her expression, the hesitant moments where she longed to do the right thing but wasn't sure she could. Natalia stood for all the women on the fringes of power, clawing their way back to agency, to purpose, to the elusive peace that often feels just out of reach. And now, with her departure, that symbolic thread is momentarily severed. General Hospital, as it always has, will move forward. The rhythm of Port Charles will continue, alliances will be formed and shattered, forbidden romances will ignite, schemes will rise and fall with the turn of a whisper. But something will be missing. Not just a character, but a soul. From now on, viewers will no longer see Eva LaRue among the vibrant tapestry of faces that populate the city's drama. Her absence will be felt in the silences where Natalia once stood, in the scenes where her wisdom, restraint, or weary strength might have changed the course of someone else's story. That absence will ache in quiet ways because Natalia never screamed for attention, but when she was there, she made you feel something deep and unshakable. Instead of watching her navigate fictional turmoil on daytime television, audiences will now follow a different story. One far more visceral, one written not with a pen but with fear, resilience, and blood. Through My Nightmare Stalker, the Eva LaRue story, the world will come to understand why she stepped away from the role so many had grown to admire. This is not a scripted drama designed to titillate, it is a real-life narrative meant to awaken. In it, LaRue bears the raw wounds of over a decade spent living under siege, not from mobsters or courtroom vendettas, but from a man who turned her and her daughter's life into a labyrinth of dread. Her courage to revisit that pain and offer it up to the world is not performative, it is protective. It is advocacy through honesty, a plea for empathy, a bid for awareness, and a demand for systemic change in how society addresses the trauma of stalking. For those who knew her only through the lens of Natalia, the documentary will reveal another dimension, a woman who did not just portray strength but lived it. When she chose to leave General Hospital, it was not out of weariness or dissatisfaction but out of the purest kind of love, the need to keep her child safe. In doing so, she took on the most profound role of her life, not as a scripted mother but as a real one, fierce and unrelenting. She stepped into the shadows not to disappear but to shield, to fight, to heal. The stage lights may have dimmed for now, but a different light now shines, one lit by truth, by survival, by the love of a mother who chose the hardest, bravest thing, to walk away. In time, perhaps Natalia will return. Perhaps there will be space in Port Charles again for the kind of quiet, wounded resilience that she carried so well. But even if that day never comes, her legacy remains. Not in cliffhangers or plot twists, but in the truth she brought to every moment on screen and the sacrifice that led to her exit. Eva LaRue has shown the world that sometimes, stepping away from fiction is the most powerful act of storytelling. Sometimes, the greatest character arc isn't scripted, it's lived. And in choosing her daughter over the comfort of routine, in exposing her pain to foster protection for others, LaRue has claimed a role that no director could cast, no script could contain. She is no longer just an actress. She is a mother, a warrior, a survivor. And that, without question, is the greatest role of her life. In the end, the story of Eva LaRue and her departure from General Hospital transcends the boundaries of entertainment and enters the realm of something far more profound. An affirmation of strength, a reckoning with trauma, and a testament to the fierce love of a mother who chose her child over everything else. While Natalia's exit from Port Charles may appear on the surface as just another plotline coming to a close, the truth behind it resonates with a depth that few television narratives can ever hope to capture. LaRue's journey is not one marked by scripted resolutions or rehearsed farewells. It is carved from lived experience, forged in fear, and ultimately illuminated by unbreakable resilience. Her role on screen may have ended in quiet reflection, but her legacy off-screen continues, through advocacy, through truth-telling, through the courage it takes to relive a nightmare so others may wake up to the reality of stalking and its enduring impact. General Hospital will carry on, as it always does, weaving new threads of drama and desire, justice and betrayal. But there will always be a space where Natalia once stood, a reminder of the layered complexity she brought to the canvas, and of the real-life woman who gave her breath and soul. And as viewers tune in to the next twist in Port Charles, they may find themselves glancing toward the shadows, not out of fear, but out of reverence for the strength it takes to step away from fiction to protect what is real. Because somewhere beyond the lights, beyond the scripts, and beyond the applause, Eva LaRue continues her most vital role, not for the camera, not for the critics, but for the daughter she vowed to protect. And in that choice, she has become more than a character. She has become a symbol. A survivor. A hero. And that ending, unlike most in daytime television, is not just unforgettable, it's real,